My name is Pastor Lynn, and I'm the children's pastor here. And at this time, I would like to invite all of the children forward to come and join me on the stage for some together time. Come on, come on. And I promise I'll give you a gift at the end. You can gather around me. Merry Christmas, my friends. I have a story to share with you today. 'Twas the days before Christmas when all through the house not a person was resting. Parents scurried about, their searching and shopping undertaken with care for those perfect gifts the kids hoped would be there. Last-minute ideas, gifts ordered online, moms and dads thanking God for Amazon Prime. Running the holiday race in a flurry, programs and concerts, recitals and parties, the days crammed with holiday activities passed, with little time to be with the family and rest, to play games together and snuggle up tight, to watch silly movies and look at the pretty lights. So children, open your ears, and for the next few minutes, sit tight, for we've gathered in tradition to hear of that glorious night, to prepare our hearts for Emmanuel's birth, Jesus, God with us on this place we call earth. Like Mary and Joseph, preparing our hearts for his holy arrival, a new life to start. His birth was so simple, so humble, so small, yet his presence among us is the best gift of all. He was born in a stable, no crib for a bed. The little Lord Jesus laid down his sweet head. And Joseph and Mary, tired from their travels, worn weary from childbirth, could have unraveled, when a crew of unshaven, ruddy shepherds showed up, making a whole lot of ruckus about angels and such. They welcomed him in as their own special guest, come to worship the King in his straw-filled nest. And leaving the barn, the shepherds bursting with joy, spread the news of salvation, come in this baby boy. Emmanuel, Jesus, God right here with us, not in a faraway place we can't touch. It was God that created together time, loving each other from sun up till bedtime. Enjoying the season, but each other more, because this is what Jesus came to earth for. He grew up and died on a cross for our sins, so that we could be a part of God's family again. Emmanuel, God, who is with us each day, with a heart full of love to show us the way. He came to this world with a heavenly chorus to show us what he loves is standing before us. Taking time to build snowmen and make cookies might get messy, turning off our iPods, our phones, and other things that are techie. A bundle of toys and that perfect present won't quite measure up to our actual presence. Jesus, he came to draw families together, so we will love strongly, no matter life's weather. The lights, the trees, and gifts are most exciting and fun when we spend time together with God's Holy Son. So put aside Christmas stuff and what the world says you must do, and treasure the treasures that God gave to you. Treasures you can't buy and put under the tree. Treasures that make up your own family. Gather your loved ones and hug them just tight. Merry Christmas to all, and to all, a good night. So in just a minute, we're gonna go get your gift, but on each one of them is this card, and it says the gift of time. And on the back of it, I want you to think of someone that you're going to give your gift of time to tomorrow, because together time is the best kind of time. Amen. Merry Christmas, friends. Let's go get our gifts.
In those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. This was the first census that took place while Quirinius was governor of Syria. And then everyone went to their own town to register. So Joseph also went up to the town of Nazareth in Galilee, to Judah, to Bethlehem, the town of David, because he belonged to the house and line of David. He went there to register with Mary, who was pledged to be married to him, and they were expecting a child. While they were there, the time came for the baby to be born, and she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in cloths and placed him in a manger, because there was no guest room available for them. And there were shepherds living out in fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. And the angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord showed around them, and they were terrified. But the angel of the Lord said to them, "Do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all people.
Today in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord. This will be a sign to you. You will find a baby wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger." Suddenly a great company of heavenly hosts appeared with an angel, praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth to those on whom his favor rests." When the angels had left them and gone to heaven, the shepherds looked at one another. "Let's go to Bethlehem and see this thing that had happened, which the Lord has told us about." So they hurried off and found Mary and Joseph and the baby who was lying in a manger. When they had seen him, they spread the word concerning what had happened, what had been told to them about this child, and all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds had told them. But Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart. The shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all the things they had heard and seen, which were just as they had been told. On the 8th day, when it was time for to circumcise the child, he was named Jesus, and the name the angel had given him before he was conceived.
Today we light the Christ candle. In doing so, we remember that Christ is the light of the world, and that Christ had already come and will come again. He has promised to come and make all things right. We carry part of this light with us wherever we go, so as when we close our service later tonight, we will each light our own candle as a reminder to share the light of Christ with the world around us, to let our little light shine in a dark world. This is our calling, to walk into the world with the light of Jesus, that we might declare boldly that Christ has come already and will come again.
It's January 26, 2008. I'm eating at Donato's Pizza in Cincinnati, Ohio, when my wife, now about 8 months pregnant with our daughter, says to me, "I'm just not feeling right. It seems like these could be contractions." Now, we weren't ready for contractions at this point. We had only been to one birthing class, and we were about a month away from the due date. But we had only learned two things so far in this one birthing class, and two things only. One was that I had one job, and my job was to do whatever my wife told me I was supposed to do. And two, that we were supposed to go to the hospital when the contractions got to 5 minutes apart. So beginning in a Donato's Pizza on a Saturday evening, we began counting the contractions. And by about 10 p.m. or so that night, it was getting regularly to the point of 5 minutes. Now, we didn't know anything about anything in terms of birthing children, so we figured we ought to go to the hospital. Along the way, we called my mom and my mother-in-law and let them know that we thought it was possible that the baby was coming. And so they began their plans to thinking that maybe in the middle of the night, they themselves would drive down and see if they could catch the birth of the baby. We went to the hospital. We checked Charisse in. She got hooked up to all of these machines, and I was immediately told to skedaddle. I was kicked out of the room. I wanted to argue. I knew I was supposed to take care of her, massage her back if she was hurt, but I was gone. I was out. And I went and I sat in a waiting room, and time was slow. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes. Nothing was happening. No one was telling me what was going on. I was half afraid a nurse was going to come out and tell me that a baby had been born and that I had missed it. I had no idea what was happening. Until finally a nurse comes out and calls my name and brings me back. It's now roughly midnight, maybe pushing 1 a.m. And they said, hey, listen, we can't get any kind of readings here that this is labor. We think it's false labor and probably Braxton Hicks contractions. We're going to let you go and head home. No big deal. Well, okay. I took Charisse out of the hospital that night. We went out to the car and drove home. Upon getting home, it was really the middle of the night, 1, 2 in the morning, something like that. And like all good pastors' children, they only know how to be born on Sunday mornings, because of course. And so at 1 or 2, whatever it was in the morning, I said to Charisse, she was really struggling, really in pain, but I said, hey, I've got to preach in a couple hours. Is it okay if I go to sleep? And she said, yeah, no big deal. And so I went and got a couple hours of sleep, about 3 or 4 hours of sleep. And about 6:30, I rolled over and noticed that Charisse wasn't there. And she wasn't in bed next to me, which she always was. And so I began thinking, what is going on? And kind of groggy and still trying to wake up, I sit up in bed and I look down to the end of the bed and an image I will never forget. There was my wife, breathing like she had just ran a marathon, sitting on top of a giant exercise ball. The brain doesn't connect real well in the morning, so I was like, what is going on here? And she says, I haven't slept at all tonight, and the pain has not stopped. And I said, that doesn't sound right. So I called the doctor and got the doctor on call on the phone. She answered the phone. It's very important before I tell the rest of the story that you understand that I said the doctor was a she. This is very important, okay? She answers the phone, and I tell her everything that's going on. And she says, sounds about right, bring her in. And I said, we were just there, doctor. We were just there, and they sent us home. And she goes, wait, you were just here? I said, yes, we were just in the hospital like 4 hours ago. And she says, okay, this is the part that I'll never get over. She said to me, well, why don't you give her 2 Tylenol and call me in an hour? 2 Tylenol didn't dull your headache this morning. And she's in active labor, and I had to go and get 2 Tylenol and hand it to her as the solution for the pain she was in. I've never felt like such an idiot in my life. So I give her the Tylenol, and I call my mother-in-law. Now, my mother-in-law is a nurse, and early on in her career, she had been a labor and delivery nurse. So I called her and told her what was going on, and what the doctor says, and she said, oh no, I disagree. You need to bring her to the hospital now. And so here I had our doctor and my mother-in-law telling me 2 very different things. And if there's anything I've learned in life, it is in moments like this, you listen to your mother-in-law. And so we decided at that point now about 7:30 in the morning, that we're going to go downstairs, get in the car, and go to the hospital. Now, we lived in Cincinnati, as I said, and Cincinnati has a really tall up and down buildings for homes. They are not ranch-style wide, one floor, multiple floors, big, tall ceilings, up and down. We are upstairs in our bedroom, and we have to get a woman in active labor down the flights of these stairs and outside to get to the hospital. And so we began the long, laborious journey of walking her down these massive staircases while she was in active labor. One step, a couple minutes would pass. We'd try another step. I'm standing between her and gravity, making sure that nothing goes wrong as we walk slowly down the stairs. Nearly an hour passes for us to get down one floor. And when we get there, we turn around the corner and head back to what's like a mud room. It's got linoleum on the floor. Our shoes are in there. This is the last step before you go outside into a Midwestern winter. And so we get into that room, and Cherie says the worst possible thing I could imagine her saying to me. She says, "Tim, I have this overwhelming feeling that I'm supposed to push right now." And I said, "No, you don't. The last thing you need to do is push. No pushing. Whatever you feel, do not push." And she says, I know, but I just feel like I have to. My body is telling me to push." I said, "No pushing. Let's get our shoes on and we'll go outside." So I try to take her at this point, active labor, standing up, and I try to get her to sit onto a chair so we could get our shoes on. And every time I get her bottom almost to the chair, she freaks out and stands back up and says, "I'm going to sit on the baby." Now, I don't know a whole lot about female anatomy, so I have no idea if this is a crazy idea or not. I don't know if she is kind of in one of those pregnancy moments or if this is a legitimate real-life concern. I don't know. And so I say, okay, well, I will try to put your shoes on while you're standing. And so now I'm trying to get my actively labor, full-term wife to stand like this long enough for me to put shoes on her. It was a circus, to say the least. And so finally, after trying all of these methods to get shoes on, I said to her, "Listen, if I go outside without shoes on, can you go outside without shoes on? We'll do this together." And so she agrees that's what we're going to do. Again, it's late January in Cincinnati, Ohio. So it's freezing outside. And here we are in our mid-20s, about to have our first kid, one birthing class in, walking barefoot out into our driveway in Cincinnati, Ohio. We go down more steps to get downstairs because everything is steps in Cincinnati. Steps, 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 steps. By now it's about 9 o'clock. We have been trying for 2.5 hours from my waking up to get to the car, all right? It has been a chore. And so we had one of these old cars that didn't have a clicker, and it only had one keyhole, and that was on the driver's side. So I walk her around to the passenger side. I run back around to unlock my side so that the whole car would unlock, and she says to me, "Tim, I think the baby's here." And I said, "No, she isn't." I'm still thinking I can will her to not push, you know? What do I know about birthing children, right? I thought it was a pushing effort. She goes, "No, seriously, I think the baby's here." And so I ran back over there. I said, "Well, let me try to lay you down. My entire information is based on primetime TV here, right? Like, let's lay you down." And again, it's the same thing. I try to lay her down, and as soon as she starts tipping, she yells at me, "I'm going to sit on the baby, stop it." And so now she's standing barefoot, claiming that the baby is about to be born in the middle of the winter in our driveway in Cincinnati, Ohio. And so I said, "Well, what are we going to do?" She goes, "Tim, it's happening. She is going to be born now." And so she had these big, baggy jogging pants with elastics on. And I took just a little peek, and I thought, yeah, this may be right. And Cherie says, "Listen, just go get the towels and we'll do this ourselves." Okay, so I sprint into the house, run upstairs, grab towels, come back downstairs, get back outside. Again, we're still barefoot in the middle of the winter. And I go up to her and I say, "Are you ready? We got to do this." She says, "Let's do it." And so I laid towels on my right arm. I grabbed her pants with my left arm. I yanked her pants to the earth, reached down and caught Mackenzie in my toweled arm, my right hand, and we delivered her standing up in the winter in Cincinnati, Ohio. And so at this point, Sharice and I decide the next best move is to just get to the hospital. We would probably be near to the hospital by the time any kind of ambulance got to us. So let's just be proactive and go. So we get into our car. Sharice is holding Mackenzie, still connected to placenta, the whole thing, right? And I start driving away. And the first call I make is to my mother-in-law. And I say, "Hey, listen, we're going to the hospital. Mackenzie is here." And she says, "Say what now?" And I said, "Okay, well, Mackenzie was born. She was born in our driveway. We're on the way to the hospital now." And she goes, "Wait, hold on a second. I don't hear anything." And I said, "Well, yeah, it's going pretty well." She goes, "No, I need to hear that baby cry. Is she even breathing?" And I said, "I think so. Everything looks normal." And she goes, "I don't hear her. You've got to make her cry to make sure that her lungs are working." And I said, "Okay, well," so then Sharice and I start pinching at Mackenzie, right? Now, if you know Mackenzie is a sweet-natured, fun-loving kid. And let me tell you, she was from like minute one, because we are pinching at this baby, and she's just wiggling at us like this. We're like, "Well, I guess we got to pinch harder." So we're pinching at her. My mother-in-law is now nervous, right? And finally, we get her just right that she gets mad at us and starts screaming. Okay, lungs work. So we get off the phone, and now I'm on the freeway driving over to the hospital. So now I call the hospital, and I get some poor clerk on a board. And I said, "Hey, hello, my name is Tim Brooks. I was just there about 4 hours ago. My wife was there because we were in labor, and you sent us home. And now the baby is on her way with us to the hospital." Okay, got transferred. We got to the hospital a few minutes later, pulled up to the emergency room, and there was like a dozen to 24 medical professionals outside waiting for us. Multiple wheelchairs. We only needed one. We got there. We get Sharice and the baby on a wheelchair. They take off with her, and I'm told, see, I'm prepared, like I've got my one role, do whatever Sharice tells me to do. I was kicked out again. The medical professional told me, "Go park, come in, we'll take care of the rest." So I go find a parking space, and by the time I'd come back in, they'd cut the umbilical cord, they'd given her a room to stay, and they were in the hallway just waiting for me, and off we went. While we were driving to the hospital, I always like to tell this part of the story. We're in the car, everything's calmed down now. I've talked to the hospital, they're waiting for us. We're holding our baby, wondering what's going to come next, and Sharice looks over at me and says to me, "Why did you pick the good towels?" I picked the first towels I saw. Unreal. And so eventually, crazy things happen. Chaos comes. Wild, unexpected things, and you respond and you deal. But when the chaos started subsiding, when calm started coming, we were now in just a typical birthing room in Good Sam Hospital. It was up on like the 14th floor or something like that. And it had just this incredible view of the city. The hospital is not far from the University of Cincinnati. There's just all sorts of old, neat homes, and we can just see miles and miles out the hospital. And I was holding Mackenzie. Mackenzie was premature, so she was small. She was born at 4 pounds, 3 ounces, and her head could fit in my fingers, and her legs wouldn't make it all the way to my elbow. And I could just hold her like this. She weighed nothing. She was so small. And I remember looking out that window down the streets of Cincinnati and having this overwhelming feeling of parental dread, of how big and hard the world is, how mean people could be, how dangerous it could be in the world. And I just felt how small this child was. And I felt so deeply charged to care for this baby. And from the very beginning, it seemed like we were given chaos and hard knocks, hard rules about the way that the world works. And we had to respond and go to the nth degree just to care for her. And I began to think of the shootings in this world. And I began to think of mean people and how they can cut you down, and violence, and who knows what the future holds, disease. And I stirred, and I became so incredibly nervous about parenting this very small, tiny, helpless, weak baby. And I knew that I loved this child with all of my heart. I knew that no matter what, I was to protect this child at all costs. And this was love, the very definition of love for me. But I'm amazed at Christmas time at how different the love of God looks than the love of a parent. You see, his son Jesus was born in similarly chaotic circumstances. A pregnant woman traveling without airplane or car across her country for a census given to them by a foreign land. Unexpected contractions while away from the comforts of their home. A fully booked inn. A baby born with only a manger to lie in. A birth announcement given by angel to shepherds who were minding their own business, tending their flock by night. Unlike myself and my own inclinations, God's love did not protect his son at all costs. God's love instead gave his child away to teenagers, to us. What selfless love this is. And here's the thing, Sharice and I didn't exactly clothe ourselves in glory in our first acts of parents. Mackenzie's entrance into the world was into a cold winter in the Midwest with no coat for her. It was freezing and dangerous and scary and wild. And since then, we haven't always gotten it right. In this room, there are probably people who are more talented parents than we are. People who are more patient, more attentive, more compassionate, more alert. There are moments where we could have been all of those things for the sake of raising Mackenzie. But in spite of all of my shortcomings and all the mistakes I've made, I would never give Mackenzie away, even if it was to parents who promised to treat her better than I ever could. There's no chance. My love dictates that I will keep her as near to me as I can. And I will protect her to the nth degree as much as I can in this wild and broken and violent and scary world. But again, God is not so careful. He gives his child into this chaotic world. He gives Jesus away to us. And we're told in the announcement of his birth that along with Jesus, the glory of God that is in the highest is also given to this earth. And it's shown to us in the form of peace on earth, unto whom his favor rests. This gift is a gift given into chaos, that we might experience his peace and his favor. And today we celebrate this selfless act of love as we remember those events 2,000 years ago. We celebrate them together, that God sent his son into the world so that his glory, peace, and favor may rest upon us. God didn't protect himself or his child from the violence of this world, from the brokenness of this world. He looked upon our situations, our stories, our hurts, our mistakes, our past. And against all odds and all reason, when God should never have trusted a world this sinful, God gives his son away into the mess, into the chaos, because God is not afraid and God is not above the chaos of this world. So today we remember this gift of love. By taking this first candle, the candle that I'll go to the Christ candle, we lit it in remembrance and in celebration that Christ is born. The light of the world has come to dwell amongst us. And I'm going to take this and light it, and I'm going to light 4 pastors here, and we're going to do it just a little bit differently this year. We're not going to walk as pastors filling every light. We're going to watch the light of Christ spread as we share it with one another. So from one light, the light of Christ given to one person, I'm going to give it to 4, and they're going to light the first person in each section. What I'm hoping you'll do is you'll pass it down your row, and when it gets to the end, you will turn behind you and light the person behind you. And like a zigzag or Z throughout the entire sanctuary, we'll see how one light representing that of Christ can light this entire room as we receive it and then pass on the good news to our neighbor as well. One little reminder that I'd like to give to you before we do this is that if your candle is lit, please hold it up and down, and the person who is unlit can dip to the side in to get their light. That way the one that is lit won't be tipped over so that there becomes wax on the floor. And so once your candle is lit, please hold it upwards and have the next person light it. If you're at the end of an aisle, be mindful to receive it from in front of you or pass it behind you and let it Z throughout the sanctuary.
Heavenly host. Christmas.
Silent night ended with the light of the world born, giving us the gift of joy to receive the joy of Christ and then give it away to the world. And as you look around and see the lights around the room tonight, it's a reminder of the gift of joy and how it can spread when we receive the gift of Jesus born on a silent night, and then we pass it on and give it away. At Crossroads, we hope you have the merriest of Christmases, and that your celebrations and this tonight and then on into tomorrow, that you receive such incredible joy, and that in your moments of joy, your raptures of joy, you recognize the gift that it is, the gift given to us, the ultimate gift, that God would send his Son into the world, that we would no longer be slaves to sin.